Part 1. Introduce. What if the reality you experience every day, the news you read, the opinions you hold, the very fabric of your world, is just a shadow play on the wall of a prison you don't know exists? This is not a prison of iron bars and stone walls. It is a far more sophisticated cage, one whose walls are invisible, built from comfort and convenience. Its chains are not forged from steel, but from the endless stream of information custom-tailored to your beliefs, your desires, and your fears. It is a prison that feels like freedom. But what if you were offered a key? A key to see the walls for what they are, to understand the mechanism of the lock, and to begin the arduous journey toward the light. This key was forged over 2,000 years ago in ancient Athens by a philosopher named Plato. He told a story, an allegory, that serves as a blueprint for this prison of the mind. And in our modern world of glowing screens and polarizing politics, his key has never been more essential. This is the story of his cave and how it reveals the truth of our own. Part 2. The Modern Problem. We live in an age of unprecedented connection, yet we have never felt more divided. We carry the sum of human knowledge in our pockets, yet we feel more confused than ever. There is a strange and disorienting puzzle at the heart of modern life, a feeling that something is deeply wrong with the way we perceive the world and each other. It begins with the digital deluge. The endless scroll on our devices has become the background radiation of our lives, a constant stream of information, opinion, outrage, and advertising. This landscape is not a calm library of facts. It is a chaotic, algorithmically driven arena where society feels increasingly disordered and divided. The result is a profound sense of exhaustion. The problem is not merely informational, it is emotional. Constant exposure to polarizing content, to the curated perfection of others' lives, and to the relentless drumbeat of crises, real or manufactured, takes a psychological toll. It fosters increased anxiety, emotional reactivity, and a state of burnout that has been called compassion fatigue. Civil, constructive dialogue feels impossible, not just because we disagree on facts, but because we are being emotionally conditioned to distrust and dislike one another. This is the first piece of the puzzle, a pervasive feeling of disconnection and frustration. The second piece is the mechanism behind this feeling. Our online experience is not a wide-open window to the world. It is a carefully curated and personalized reality. This phenomenon has been termed the filter bubble, a personal ecosystem of information catered to us by algorithms. These complex systems track our every click, our search history, our location, and our social interactions to guess what we want to see. They then feed us more of the same, creating what is known as an echo chamber, a closed system where our own beliefs are amplified and repeated back to us, while dissenting views are quietly filtered out. The most insidious part of this architecture is its invisibility. The algorithms do not ask for our permission, nor do they announce what they are hiding from us. Studies have shown that a majority of social media users are entirely unaware that their feeds are being curated at all. We believe we are seeing a neutral cross-section of the world, when in fact, we are seeing a reflection of ourselves. And here lies the most crucial piece of the puzzle. The walls of this prison are built with our active, albeit unconscious, consent. The algorithms are so effective because they exploit fundamental aspects of human psychology. We are all susceptible to confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. It feels good to be right. We are also prone to the false consensus effect, a bias where we overestimate how much other people share our views. When our feed is full of like-minded people, it validates our perspective, making us feel secure and legitimized. The algorithm, therefore, is not some malicious overlord forcing a viewpoint upon us. It is a mirror, reflecting our own psychological need for comfort and consistency. It creates a symbiotic feedback loop. The technology gives us what our biases crave, and our cravings train the technology to build the walls of our bubble ever higher. This is the modern puzzle. A world that feels simultaneously hyper-connected and deeply fragmented, a state of isolation that we have helped to build, a prison that is comfortable, personalized, and almost entirely invisible. To solve it, we must turn to a thinker who, centuries before the first line of code was ever written, understood its design perfectly. Part 3. The Philosophical Decoding. To understand the prison, we must first meet its architect, or rather, the philosopher who first drew its blueprint. In ancient Athens, through his teacher Socrates, Plato presented one of the most powerful allegories in the history of thought in his masterwork, The Republic. It is a story that provides the master key to our modern predicament. He asks us to imagine a cave. Inside this subterranean cavern, a group of people have been living since birth. They are prisoners, but of a peculiar kind. Their legs and necks are chained in such a way that they cannot move or even turn their heads. They are forced to stare, for their entire lives, at the flat rock wall in front of them. For Plato, these prisoners are us. This is the default human condition, a state of unenlightened ignorance, trapped by the limitations of our immediate experience. What do these prisoners see? Behind them, unseen, a fire is blazing. And between the fire and the prisoners runs a low wall, like the screen at a puppet show. Along this wall, other people, whom Plato calls the puppeteers, are walking back and forth, carrying all sorts of objects, statues of people, figures of animals, and various other shapes made of wood and stone. The fire behind these objects casts their shadows onto the wall that the prisoners are facing. The prisoners can also hear echoes bouncing off the wall, which they assume are the sounds made by the shadows themselves. This shadow play is the prisoners' entire reality. They have never known anything else. They give names to the shadows, they discuss their movements, and they even hold competitions, giving honors and prizes to whoever is quickest to identify the shapes and predict which shadow will appear next. They believe, with absolute certainty, that these flickering two-dimensional images are the truest and most real things in the world. The shadows, for Plato, represent the world we perceive through our senses, a world of fleeting, imperfect, and distorted copies of a higher reality. The puppeteers are the influential forces in any society that shape its culture and beliefs. The politicians, the poets, the storytellers, the modern-day marketers and media figures who craft the narratives that the population consumes as truth. They are the architects of the conventional wisdom that we are born into and rarely question. Now, Plato asks us to imagine that one of the prisoners is freed from his chains and compelled to stand up and turn around. The first thing he would experience is pain. His eyes, accustomed only to darkness, would be dazzled and hurt by the light of the fire. He would see the statues for the first time and be told that these are more real than the shadows he has watched his whole life. But in his confusion and pain, he would likely refuse to believe it. He would think the shadows were truer than the objects now being shown to him. This is the first stage of education, and it is a painful reorientation. It is not a gentle addition of new facts, but a jarring confrontation with the inadequacy of one's entire worldview. It is the psychological struggle of cognitive dissonance, the mental anguish that comes from realizing that what you held as certain might be wrong. It involves a painful loss of certainty and an assumption of personal responsibility that can be terrifying. This journey does not end there. The freed prisoner is then dragged, against his will, up a rough, steep, upward way and out of the cave entirely. When he emerges into the open air, he is hit by the blinding light of the sun. The pain is now unbearable. He can see nothing. True enlightenment is not an instantaneous event. It is a slow and arduous process of adjustment. At first, the man can only bear to look at shadows on the ground. Then, he might look at the reflections of people and things in water. After that, he can look at the objects themselves, the real trees, animals, and people of which the statues in the cave were mere copies. Finally, after his eyes have fully adjusted, he is able to lift his gaze to the source of all light and life, the sun itself. This world outside the cave represents what Plato called the intelligible realm, a higher reality that can only be grasped by the mind and by reason, not by the senses. The real objects are the forms, or ideas, the perfect, unchanging, eternal essences of things. Every physical chair in our world is just an imperfect imitation of the one true form of chairness. The sun represents the highest of all forms, the form of the good. For Plato, the good is the ultimate source of all reality, truth, and knowledge. Just as the sun illuminates the physical world and gives our eyes the power to see, the form of the good illuminates the world of ideas and gives our minds the power to know. To grasp the form of the good is to reach the highest state of understanding. But the story has one final tragic act. The enlightened philosopher, now understanding the true nature of reality, feels pity for his fellow prisoners still trapped in the darkness. He knows he must not remain in the world of light. It is his duty to go back down into the cave and share his discovery. Upon his return, however, he is met with disaster. His eyes, now accustomed to the sun, cannot see well in the dim light of the cave. He stumbles about, unable to make out the shadows on the wall as clearly as the others. The prisoners see this and conclude that his journey outside has ruined his sight. They mock him, calling him a fool. When he tries to tell them that their reality is an illusion and that a brighter, truer world exists outside, they do not believe him. They become hostile. They conclude that leaving the cave is a dangerous and destructive act, and they resolve that if anyone should try to free them and lead them upward, they would seize him and kill him. In this, Plato tragically foreshadows the fate of his own teacher, Socrates, who was sentenced to death by the democracy of Athens for questioning its most cherished beliefs. The allegory is a timeless warning. People will often defend their prison not because they love their chains, but because they are terrified of what lies beyond the world they know. Part 4. The application in today's world. Plato's allegory is not a mere historical curiosity. It is a living diagnostic tool for the 21st century. When we apply its symbols to our modern world, the confusing puzzle of our time begins to resolve into a chillingly clear picture. We are living in a new kind of cave, a cave with 1 billion screens. The wall the prisoners stared at is the glowing screen you hold in your hand. The flickering shadows are the posts, the headlines, the memes, and the perfectly curated images that dance across your feed. This is the new shadow play, and its puppeteers are more powerful and pervasive than Plato could have ever imagined. They are the algorithms. The complex, invisible systems that govern our digital lives are the new puppet masters. But these puppeteers are not driven by a political ideology or a desire for tyrannical control. Their motive is simpler and, in many ways, more insidious. Profit. They are designed with one primary goal: to maximize your engagement, to keep your eyes fixed on the wall. They do this by learning what you fear, what you desire, and what you believe, and then they project an endless stream of shadows perfectly tailored to hold your attention. The filter bubble is not a flaw in the system. It is the system working perfectly. The puppeteers of our age are not kings or priests with a grand vision for society. They are lines of code with a single, simple instruction: keep them watching. If the algorithms are the puppeteers, then what is the fire that casts the light? In Plato's story, the fire was a single, artificial light source within the cave, a poor imitation of the sun. In our world, we have many fires. We have the fire of partisan media. Each political tribe now huddles around its own fire, its own trusted ecosystem of news channels, websites, and commentators. For one group, the fire is Fox News. For another, it is MSNBC. Each fire casts a different light on the world, illuminating different facts, highlighting different villains, and projecting a completely different set of shadows on the wall. The result is effective polarization, not just a disagreement on policy, but a deep, visceral dislike of the other tribe. Studies show that for many, this partisan alignment has become more influential than truth itself. People within these echo chambers do not see their fire as a biased, artificial light. They are convinced it is the only true sun, and that those who huddle around other fires are not just wrong, but malicious dwellers in darkness. The shadows on our wall are not just political. They are also deeply cultural. They are the shadows of happiness. The consumerist society, amplified by advertising and influencer marketing, projects an endless parade of images that define what it means to be successful, beautiful, and fulfilled. These shadows tell us that happiness can be purchased, that self-worth is tied to possessions, and that our identity can be constructed through the brands we consume. This creates a hedonic treadmill, a relentless cycle of manufactured desire and fleeting satisfaction, chaining us to the pursuit of things that never truly fulfill us. Celebrity and influencer culture acts as a master class in puppetry, offering up idealized human figures for us to emulate. We form parasocial relationships, one-sided emotional bonds, with these meticulously crafted images, mistaking the shadow of a person for a real human connection. This modern cave is a dizzying, complex system of control. But what if the problem is even deeper? The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard offered a terrifying update to Plato's Allegory for the postmodern age. Plato's story offers a fundamental hope. There is a real world outside the cave. There is a sun. There is truth. Baudrillard suggested that in our media-saturated world, we have lost this distinction entirely. He argued that we now live in a state of hyperreality, a world composed of simulacra, copies without originals. For Baudrillard, the representation no longer points to reality, it replaces it. His famous example is Disneyland. Disneyland is not a representation of a real fantasy world. It is presented as an imaginary realm in order to make us believe that the world outside its gates, the rest of America, is the real world. But for Baudrillard, that outside world is just as much of a simulation. The map, he famously said, now precedes the territory. The media coverage of a war becomes the war itself. The social media profile becomes the person. This is the ultimate chilling evolution of the cave. Plato promised us an exit. But what if our modern cave is a labyrinth of mirrors reflecting only other mirrors? What if the escape hatch leads only to another more convincing level of the simulation? What if there is no longer an outside to escape to? This is the profound challenge we face. Navigating a world where the very distinction between the shadow and the substance has begun to dissolve. Part 5. The Empowerment and Conclusion. The diagnosis is bleak. A cave of personalized shadows, powered by partisan fires, and perhaps with no discernible exit. It is easy to fall into cynicism, to feel that we are helpless prisoners of vast, impersonal forces. But that is the final trick of the cave, to convince you that the chains are unbreakable. Plato's Allegory is not ultimately a story of despair. It is a call to the heroic journey of the philosopher. It is a story of empowerment. The escape from the cave does not begin with breaking down its walls. It begins with a simple, revolutionary act: turning your head. The journey of the philosopher is not an abstract ideal for a chosen few. It is a practical toolkit for navigating the modern world. The first tool is to recognize your chains. This is the work of self-awareness. It means acknowledging the powerful psychological forces at play within your own mind. The comforting pull of confirmation bias, the validating warmth of the false consensus effect, the deep-seated need to belong to a tribe. To see your own biases is to loosen the grip of the chains. It is to understand that your own mind can be both your prison and your key. The second tool is to question the shadows. This is the practice of critical thinking and media literacy. Do not passively consume the images on the wall. Interrogate them. Ask, who is projecting this shadow? What is their motive? What is being left out of the frame? Learn to distinguish between sensationalism, which is designed to provoke an emotional reaction, and genuine reporting, which is designed to inform. To question the shadows is to rob them of their power to define your reality. The third tool is to defy the puppeteers. You cannot destroy the algorithms, but you can refuse to be a predictable subject. Intentionally confuse them. Actively seek out diverse perspectives and challenging information. Read news sources from across the political spectrum. Follow thinkers with whom you disagree. Click on things that lie outside your bubble. This is the modern equivalent of forcing your eyes to adjust to a new light. It will be uncomfortable. It will feel at times like you are being blinded. But this discomfort is the feeling of your mind expanding. This is the true courage of the philosopher, the courage to be blinded by complexity in a world that craves simple tribal certainties. It is the courage to stand in the gray area while others retreat to their black and white corners. This journey may feel lonely. The tribe may mock you, as the prisoners mocked the one who returned. They may say your journey has ruined your eyes because you no longer see the shadows with the same simple clarity. But you will know that your vision has not been ruined. It has been deepened. The cave is not, ultimately, a physical place. It is a state of mind. The chains are not made of iron. They are forged from our unquestioned assumptions. And the key to our freedom is not something we find, but something we must forge for ourselves, through courage, through curiosity, and through the relentless, difficult, and beautiful work of thought. The shadows on the wall are compelling. The fire is warm. The tribe is comforting. But the unexamined life, as Socrates reminded us, is not worth living. The question, then, is not whether the cave exists. It is all around us. The only question is whether you have the courage to turn, to face the blinding light of a new idea, and to begin the long ascent toward the sun.